What's up, man?
It's going well. It's going well. How about yourself? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Not much of a social media person, so I was trying to figure out if I'm doing the video piece right.
Nah, you got it, and you got the headphones. You got the headphones too, so you're set
Yeah.
up. Like
Oh, yeah.
you're
I'm a
set up.
headphone guy. I'm a headphone guy, that's for sure.
Okay, nice, man. I gotta get myself a good quality headphones now. But
Yeah.
but man, no, it's all good. I can hear you. I can see it looks clear and everything. So I appreciate you, Function, for sharing your time, your story with us, because I know this it's been interesting. So for people that are just tuning in, for people that are just watching now, a little bit of background story is right now I'm starting to interview. It started with Liquid and kind of understanding where that came from, what were people doing. So we interviewed Distortion, Tiny Love, and D Strange, and they were sharing about what Liquid, what how they came across it, these influential figures, the raves, the light scene. So we started talking about that, and then also I know waving. Waving has a history as well, and I believe I'm not sure function. Did we communicate before about these interviews, or how did we? I'm trying to remember. How did we end up first communicating? Did I reached out to you? I
You
believe.
reached out to me and just said, like, you wanted to hear about waving. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, because I think people usually associate me with waving. Yeah.
Yeah, so your name was coming up. I know from the Waves Within event, I remember you were a judge, you were a speaker on the panel list. I remember there was I think the
Hmm.
last one, I was there, and then I know your name is brought up. I believe if Jay Smooth mentioned you or someone mentioned your name because I was interested in who could I ask about the waving history in the West Coast, and your name pops up. So
Mm.
yeah, I reached out to you and you were like, yeah, you love to share. And also I didn't know that you're from Chicago, correct?
My upbringing, my junior high, elementary, high school days was Chicago area.
Chicago. And you mentioned, I know we were messaging about like how Chicago has a whole scene in the music and you were doing Liquid as well.
Yeah, for sure. Liquid dancer first, and
Yeah.
then got into popping later.
Yeah, so this is I feel like this is a interesting like to like I yeah, I don't even know where to we could just get into that, but pretty much yeah, for everyone if you don't know who Function is, a very influential, inspiring figure in the waving community, Waves gang, which is like currently the that's from the West Coast, pushing waving to around the world. Waves Within is this like the second event I believe you guys are putting or third?
We started Ways Within in 2020, Jay Smooth and I.
Okay.
We started it online during the pandemic.
Hmm.
And the idea was like at that time, everyone was pretty isolated, and we were trying to find ways to connect the community together for Waves specifically.
Right.
And like one thing after the next, it kind of got traction, and then kept doing it. And then, you know, at one point we're like, we need to get people together in person, like all the restrictions lifted or whatever.
Right.
And so now we've done two ways within, like in a live setting, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, right now, it's like we consider like the final in LA, but it touches other parts of the world as right now too.
Wow. Wow. So I think that's really cool. I think honestly, I would say to my knowledge or when I started to see like waving really taking shape of like its own community in a sense was when these events when you guys started pushing it. So
Yeah,
now
yeah. I
it's
mean,
like wavers specifically. Like people want to just wave like
waving's having its moment, I would say.
yeah.
Like people are kind of, jumping in and seeing the possibilities of waving, which is dope. You know, for us though, it's just something, we come from popping,
Mm.
popping scene for most of my time, and
Mhm.
waving was always kind of, I don't want to say put on the side, but there was I would say there's like a small community of wavers in the popping scene that were kind of focused on waving, and we kind of ran with that and wanted to continue building it. So that's it's man, it's a work in progress, bro. This is all still happening. It's like we're figuring it out as we go. We love
Right,
doing it. It's all for the love of pushing the style out and continuing to get people inspired and you know
right.
keep the art form going. Because I think it's a really important thing.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Before I want, we would like to hear about how you got into liquid and how you got into waving and the highlights of your the story your history. I want to ask one more question about the waves within events or even you guys as a crew, your projects. Is there any goals in the future or anything maybe you're looking forward to or would like any direction where you want to see this movement going in the future?
That's interesting. We want it to continue. Like I would like to see what I feel like right now is like I see the US and Europe connecting with each other. I
Mm,
would like to see it more in Asia. Like I would like to start seeing the waving community in China and Japan and those countries start
right,
to get more involved because right now it feels a little bit disparate. Um, you see
mm,
this connection happening right now between US and Europe, but you don't see it as much with the Asian countries right now, and like knowing how many poppers are in China,
right,
and
right.
also, you know, trying to get into waving. It's like there's just a lot of like sort of untapped dancers, if you will, that are probably interested in waving that just haven't got enough exposure with it yet. That like we need to continue to try and get us to rally behind and move it forward and just takes time. It's like it's the not only the language barrier, I think, but like the
Yeah,
travel isn't as easy right now, I'd say also. So
that's true.
you
Right,
know
right.
we just want to keep pushing it, man. We want to keep the style going and preserve it for sure. Like make sure everyone understands the history and who did what and who contributed what, but also like make sure that it can move forward too.
Right. Nice. The past and the future. Come looking
Yeah,
at
you
both of them.
got to have it
Yeah.
sometimes like a foot in the past and a foot in the future, if you will, and you're in the present, I guess, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the balance, the midpoint. Well, then let's get into it then. And for anyone watching, feel free if you have a question you want to ask, you can write it in the chat here, and I'll interject at some moments during our conversation. But yeah, feel free any question. Let me just write that right now so I could pin that for anyone that joins. So feel free to ask questions, and then. Yeah, so I guess if we can begin at how did you get into liquid? Since that
Liquid
was the
first.
first, yeah, tell us how did you discover that or what was going on?
um, so I was, like I said, I grew up in the Chicago area in the 90s,
Hmm.
and so for anyone who's like hasn't been on the face of the earth for a long time, house music was prevalent in the area. So, for us, it was just as big as hip hop music was in the 90s. So, I mean, hip hop took over by storm, right? Like it was across. You had Biggie and Tupac, whatever. Chicago also had their own thing going on, but like that was like a
Hmm.
lot of the hip hop movement at the time. But for Chicago specifically, like house music was like it was just part of the city, the culture, and it was on the radio a lot.
Oh,
Um, so at nighttime, what you kind of hear is like once we started getting into nighttime, you'd start hearing more like house DJs on the radio. This is
mm-hmm.
obviously way before internet or YouTube or whatever. So
Hmm.
we were hearing a lot of house music at nighttime, and it was like, yeah, what is this? Like we knew what it was, and we didn't know if this was more of like a nationwide thing or not.
Mm.
Um, so I discovered Liquid in '97, and this
Mm.
was the at a house party. So my friends, we were all in school together. We all were partying. what ended up happening was the girls were dating like the older guys. Like the girls who went to school, it was always like that in school. Like the girls were always dating the older guys, and the older guys were already kind of like, going to rave parties before us. So I
Mm.
remember being at my friend's house party. His parents were gone. There were like literally hundreds of kids on the
Wow.
block at this house,
Wow.
and I saw Liquid for the first time there, and I was just like blown away. I was like, "What is this? Like, what are you doing?" And um, that was my first introduction to it, was through some guy who actually also like happened. He was older than me, and he happened to know like my older brother, because my brother went to the same high school, and they're older than me, but they were already doing it. And so at this point, I was kind of already like hooked. I saw it and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? you
Whoa.
know, it
Okay.
was it was just it was like the most like magical looking thing in person, because like, again, like you never saw it before, you never saw anyone doing it. The guy was dressed more like, look, like Adidas tracksuit kind of vibe, Kangol hat,
Hmm.
and doing Liquid. And so, I kind of, that's why I was like, what are you doing? And it was like, I'm doing Liquid.
Wow.
And at that point, like I had him, they showed me, and they actually showed me two ways. Like the first way was actually like doing the
Hmm.
what you see, like kind of the back and forth like this, and the other
Hmm.
way was actually showing me like figure eight. And there's like kind of two ways that you can approach it, if you will.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, so yeah, it was actually a girl in my grade that was at the party who I knew I could like talk to her more about what it was, because she was already going to a
Okay.
lot of raves, and
Oh, okay.
that basically pulled me into the scene at that point.
Oh, so then you were going to raves, you were going to
I
parties,
was
you
going to raves.
were going to raves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and like the year before, I actually was going, like we had underage house music dance clubs when I was a freshman
Nice.
in high school. So that was going on, but you didn't see Liquid in the clubs. You
Okay.
would see people doing what you call Chicago footwork. So the first
Hmm.
thing I saw was Chicago footwork, and then the year after, I started seeing people doing Liquid.
Got it. And not the liquid is seen in the clubs or only in the raves?
Raves, only raves. Like the
Raves.
club scene, like it wasn't. I didn't see it. I saw more like footwork.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely saw people doing footwork, and the difference though was the music was a little bit different in the clubs to the rave scene too. So club scene had more like what they call hard house, which kind of,
Mm-hmm.
it exists, but it's not like really what it was in the '90s. If you guys know who like underground construction music, or these
Interesting.
guys, Alex Peace,
I gotta
you'll
type
look.
all this stuff afterwards, and I have to
So
check it out.
hard house was like very prevalent in the clubs, and then the rave scene had more like deep house and techno.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Cool. So then you're going to raves in the late 97, 98. And you're like, is this, how long are you doing liquid for that? You're going to raves. Are you just, you haven't seen popping yet.
I saw popping, but
So popping was
I
already
saw popping.
exposed.
I saw popping from Breaking, from the movie Breaking. So
Okay.
popping was already out in the '80s. You know what
It
I
was,
mean? Like
so people,
this is
okay.
like a decade later. I mean, honestly, like the first thing I saw was Breaking, Pop and Taco, like, and that was already like, whoa, taco and shrimp were like, this is way next level. But like,
Okay.
you didn't see that much of it during this time. Like you would see little snippets, maybe here and there, in like a music video, because MTV was, now the thing.
Hmm.
Um,
What was
but
there
yeah.
not, you didn't see popping in Chicago during the late 90s? Like,
Oh, you did. Oh, you did. Once,
oh,
once I,
so
once I got into the rave scene,
yeah.
I also would say like there was more different styles of dancing. So there was b-boying, there was popping, there was house dancing, there was liquid. It
Hmm.
was everything. You guys can go on YouTube. Actually, there's one video from '98. If you do Midwest raves, for anyone who wants to take a look at that video. Go scrub through, and what you're going to see is what like dancing at the raves in the '90s looked like for us. And you'll see b-boys, poppers, liquid dancers, house dancers, footworking, jitting.
Okay.
Everyone was kind of coming together, because I think maybe what a difference was is like for us, raves were very, very heavily influenced on house music because of the city, because the influence of the city, and
Mhm.
the DJs that were playing there were mostly like our local legends, and we would get people coming in like
Mm.
from other parts of the country. But Chicago is so heavy on house music that you would actually see, the legends that are actually flying and headlining other cities quite often. But for us, like when they weren't getting flown around, they were just playing the
They're just
local
doing their
parties
right
in
at their
Chicago.
job.
Like I'm gonna be playing my backyard.
That's
So
good.
we had a lot of house influence, deep house, and also techno, because the Detroit guys were just like 5 hours away, where they could just drive in and play for a weekend and get paid.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Wow. Okay. So back when you were in the raves and you were with there were other liquid dancers as well in different styles. Was there, how do I say? Like, did it feel like a community, as in there were events happening, or was it more people were just going to raves and then they.
It was ciphers. It was a party. It was ciphers. It was like it wasn't organized.
Okay.
You know, it was just kids that lived in the area that would go out on Saturday night
Hmm.
to parties, and we called raves parties. People didn't like the word rave so much.
Oh, had like a connotation, like a
Well, I think there was association with like Candy Raver, and like
okay.
I think for us, like I clearly remember we like to be called party kids,
Wait,
not
wait, wait, wait.
ravers.
I'm not familiar. What is Candy Raver and what's Party Kids?
Well, Candy Raver is like the rave kids who dress in beads and all
Okay.
that, and kind of look like dress very colorful and look like how you want to say, like a Punky Brewster. I don't know, this is like
Okay,
super
okay,
old
yeah, that's
shit.
turning like styles.
Like Rainbow Bright influence,
Right.
because again, like these are kids that are born in the 70s and 80s.
Okay, got
Um,
it.
so I think there's like that candy kid vibe, but then like there's like the other side of it, like the ones who had more of a, I want to say, like what streetwear was at the time kind of
Yeah.
influence, big baggy polo shirts, Adidas, that kind of
Yeah.
vibe. And so like
Interesting. Okay.
I think there was like this association, like we were ravers, everyone was a raver, but I think they're like this word party kid was like a really common term at the time for like kids who weren't like candy ravers going to the parties and dancing a certain way too, I would say.
Interesting. It's like its own identity.
Yeah, totally. There's like you can almost like see a little bit of a, not a divide, but like the preference on like what
Yeah.
kind of
Interesting.
what
What
kind of
path you choose?
what path did you take? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was not like so much of a candy kid.
Hmm.
I was always kind of like, I would say there's like almost like more of like a hip hop streetwear
Got
influence
it.
type of vibe going on. And I'd say like also like skate kids, like skateboarder kids were going.
Interesting. That's
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. So that's like another point of the closed style, how that branches into other communities and
And how
interesting.
you were dancing and everything, to be
Yeah.
honest, because like I would also say that like, one thing I heard in the last discussion is like the use of like glow sticks and stuff. And like,
Right.
it wasn't actually that prevalent for us. Like, it was, people were definitely playing with glow sticks, but it wasn't like a huge, there was not a giant draw to glow sticks in the Chicago
Mm.
raves in the 90s. Definitely there, but not like, it wasn't like everyone was using glow sticks and doing like liquid. Some people were, but the people who were like really trying to do what we call liquid dancing weren't using glow sticks.
Hmm. Okay. What? How did you end up running into or connecting with the Liquid Pop Collective, or how did you hear of their name during the when you're at Rave?
We so the very first like liquid meeting outside of like the New York kids, I will say, in Philly, because like they're from
Right,
Philly,
right.
and Chicago area was Demph 2000, and this is the first time two like two liquid heads, at least from different parts of the United States, met.
Okay.
And I met Eric and Fu Manchu at the first Demph. And so it was basically us. I clearly remember being at like this party that no one knew what it was going to be. A million people showed up, kid you not. Like the city had no idea what was going on.
Okay.
A million people showed up. Um, all of like the 7-Elevens were cleared of food because no one was planning for this thing to happen.
Wow.
All the hotels were sold out. Like it got like taken over by rave kids. And I remember being there and seeing ciphers and stuff, and then and then running into liquid pop at that time. And that was like the first exchange of like liquid dancers from different parts of the US at this event, which now you hear about like, oh, Demp was the, you know, it's like it was like a historical liquid meetup for liquid dancers, when in the
Wow.
beginning it was myself, Eric, and Fu Manchu were the first to meet and kind of start this like, hey, let's exchange ideas and styles. Like, oh, you're dope. What you're doing is dope. But we were doing things a little bit differently.
Ooh, okay. So what were the differences, would you say?
They were very linear. Like everything was very like everything was like this very linear style of liquid, where we were more like in a what they call what people call orbital liquid.
Orbital liquid, what's that?
So orbital is when it's like you're kind of moving in like a ball, you know, like and what I saw the liquid pop guys doing is more of like this linear style liquid.
Interesting.
So
Huh.
there is a little bit difference, and that's I think that's a thing to call out, is like, you know, a lot of people learned liquid from the liquid pop collective video, so you see that. And we were doing some things in my area similar, like there were similar movements, like the splits, like that was similar. But
Hmm.
some of the other things were not similar, because I felt like we had more of an influence of this like orbital style and threading and doing stuff around your head and stuff like this. Like it was a little bit different approach.
Okay. And you're saying we as the Chicago scene, the
Yeah,
rave.
I didn't create this. Nothing. I didn't. Everything I do, I did. I did. I was watching other people. You know, like nothing. My influences were people older than me that were already in the scene doing it, and at a higher level than I was at the time. I was a kid watching him in the corner, being like, "Oh, damn, you're really good."
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they're okay. Cool. And are any of these guys still active or in the scene of in Chicago?
Um, I touched base. I found the two guys that like I would say were like the ones that I was watching a few
Hmm.
years back. I mean, they don't really dance anymore,
Hmm.
um, but it's a clear memory for me that these two guys are the ones. They were like the ones that everyone was watching, and they showed me a lot, or I was asking them a lot of questions about what they were doing. But they were liquid dancers. They were known as like the best liquid dancers in the
Wow.
area.
Hmm.
There were competitions actually at one point later on called Liquid Combat. This guy won two of them. There's another one that I won later on.
Wow.
But yeah, they were doing that, you know, what I would say more was like the Chicago style of liquid.
Interesting. Okay. So the and I saw Distortion he wrote as well. The meet Demph was the meetup. I miss it. Okay, also said Eric defined his style over liquid, but he explained a little different at the Liquid Dance conference. So then, after in the years like 2000 and moving forward, did you start to transition into waving, or what was? How did you end up? Where did that come into that play, that influence?
There is, you know, like you're hearing what Tiny says, there liquid and waving go hand in hand. Like this, I think we all know or feel this in some
Right,
regards.
right.
So
Yeah.
um, it was natural, because again, like the way we were approaching liquid in Chicago was not the same as New York. I feel like people were trying to get a little bit more open with it, which automatically moved you into being more like a waving style, because you weren't so focused on just doing stuff with your hands. We
Hmm.
started this idea of splitting. We did that too, but we started to split and really split. You know,
Hmm.
like
Yeah, forward.
splitting completely off. We're like, now we're not even in close to our bodies. We're just, our whole body is like one giant wave. That's
Interesting.
that's a big difference I noticed, was that I think people in my area were really focused on being more open, not being so much here, but like trying to find ways to do liquid with different parts of your body, not just with your
Mhm.
hands.
Okay. And then how did you transition into or into waving?
Popping.
Yes, I
Oh,
guess popping
so
then.
like popping, like waving. waving is part of the popping umbrella, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you had really like two types of scenes that, or maybe I'll say three types of scenes that I'm aware of at the time. You
Mm-hmm.
had the rave scene, you had the club scene, and then you had the jams, like the hip hop jams.
Mm.
I was going to all three.
Oh, you.
I was just going out. My friends were more into my friends I went to high school with were more into clubs at the
Mhm.
time. I had to like meet people in the rave scene because like only a few of them were really connected to raves, and the girl that that showed
Right,
me like that was my friend's girlfriend. So like yeah, you
right.
had to kind of find your little path in the scenes. I also had to go out and find the where the jams were, and there's a guy named Franco De Leon for the Chicago has I think he still goes by Franco. Chicago Tribe, very famous b-boy crew. Like they were throwing events. They were
Oh,
starting to really build up Chicago's hip hop scene and b-boy scene. Like there were jams all through the '90s, but Chicago Tribe really had like put it to the next level. And Coney Rock and Shout
okay.
Sneaks, Check It. Like they were throwing jams. '99, I went to a jam at Rainbow Roller Rink in Chicago,
Hmm.
and no, sorry, it wasn't. It was that. Oh shit, where was that place called? Wasn't no, it was Rainbow Roller Rink. It's torn down now.
Oh.
Um, this in '99, what happened was I started to see more popping in the city because Chicago Tribe threw a jam, from what I remember, and a bunch of poppers showed up that weren't from Chicago area. So at this time, I saw Shallow, I
Hmm.
saw Frank Boogie, I
Hmm.
saw Bam Bam from New York,
Oh.
guy named Strings who was with Bam Bam.
Hmm.
High level poppers showed up, and this is my first time seeing like really high level poppers in the Chicago area. We had people in the hip hop jams also that were poppers, but like it was like the era of like
Hmm.
b-boy poppers. You ever heard like there's like kind of b-boy, like there's like a whole b-boy crew in one popper.
Right, right, right.
It was that era, so it's like there weren't many of us. The ones that were there in the that time that I remember is dude named Pop a Lot, a guy named Robotics, a guy named Puppet, dude
Hmm.
named TikTok, who was B-Boy and Popper, Nigel Holt, B-Boy Popper. So there were a few like, but there it was not like what it was now. And
Okay.
then only one OG, actually two OGs were around at this time. A guy named Space Capital, who was the guy who created bboy.com, if you remember that.
Okay.
Also the first guy who ever put out a popping web page on the internet. It was called Space Capital's popping page. And it was just a it was just a page with a list of poppers' names. That was it.
This was the first. Say that again. The first.
This is the first popping web page on the internet.
This is before like Mr. Wiggles and
Oh,
stuff.
way before, bro. This is like
Wow.
'90s. This is he. I asked him about. It. He said he was like working at in a university and like he learned how to make a web page. He was a popper from Chicago in the '80s, and he made Space Capital's popping page. It was called, and it just listed names of active and inactive poppers.
Wow, interesting. Huh. Well, I wish I could like get a screenshot of it. I wonder if I put that in the
You could probably
website.
go in Wayback Machine. I wonder if you go
Yes,
Wayback
yes,
Machine
that's what I
and
was
go
gonna
check it
say.
out.
And
But so
type
then
that.
so he had that, and then he started bboy.com after. And obviously bboy.com was
Mhm.
predates Wiggles and West Coast Poppin'.
Wow.
That was
Oh,
like the first one where everyone was kind of getting together and like finding like this community
mm.
started to form on the internet because it was just message board. It was like pre Reddit, forever, message boards.
Right, right. Wow. So then when did you, oh, I got two questions actually, but I don't, maybe they connect. My question that came to mind is like, how did you get the name Function? And then, but the other question I also have is, so when would you say you kind of took on popping as the style you were going to train more in, or did you stay with liquid? Did you keep them all together? I guess what was that? Yeah. So those are the two, I guess, paths.
Well, let's talk about the style first. So, like again, I was a liquid dancer first, so
Yeah.
waving came naturally. So, like the i the idea of like liquid and waving connected easily for me.
Okay.
And as I was learning liquid, there's like crossover, right? there's like tracing threads, like things that people say are part of waving too.
Right.
They were I was already learning this as I was doing liquid.
Okay. So you
So
already
like
had you already
I
had
was, yeah, like
yeah,
I think what when it was like more getting into pure popping, it's more like understanding muscle control and tighter isolation and stuff like that. Like that's where like I started to see it more from the popping side of what popping was. And popping has hand waves, which is,
Mhm.
you know, very much foundation of what liquid is too, is hand waves.
Right.
So
So
I was naturally like just it wasn't like, oh, I'm just gonna stop this and do this. It
right.
was more of like, I'm just trying to be a sponge and learn as many different styles as I can.
Okay.
And I was already good at liquid. I was already there. I already had like progressed well. But when I saw these other guys come from other parts of the US and finally showed their style in person,
Hmm.
that was a huge influence on me to start taking popping more. At the same, there's another guy named Vamp, DJ Vamp, who was in the rave scene, B-boy.
Hmm.
He he also, he was one of these people who was in the rave scene and the hip hop scene. So there are some people that are crossing over like myself.
Hmm.
And he also had said to me at the time, "Have you heard the Electric Boogaloos?" And I was like, "A little bit." And he's like, "When you see the Electric Boogaloos, you're gonna want to understand the dance."
Interesting.
And
Okay.
he was like boom boom. He was already hitting. So I was like, "Oh shit, okay." Like I'm starting to see like real hardcore hitting in person too.
Okay. It's like, ooh, I want that. I
Yeah,
like
and I think maybe a big difference is like that was going on in the raves too, but you're also like in a dark environment with
right.
it's really hard to see strobe lights, you know.
Right.
Where the jams, it was like, yeah, we're at like a youth YMCA center. There's no like real. We're here to compete. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
every
we're to battle. It
yeah.
wasn't like it's like the jam at that time was like more like, yeah, we're partying, but it was more like battle oriented, and then the rave scene is like straight party.
How did you feel transitioning from the raves to the battles? Was it an easy transition? Was there like
I mean, I was battle hungry in raves too at the time. In the very beginning, I loved battle. Your battling was that's how you got your name. That's how people like you were going to show out on both sides. So one thing I would say though is like it's just you know battles at raves were just more like we're all in a cipher together and kind of having fun and calling each other out, whatever. And I guess the same in the hip hop scene, but then like hip hop scene actually made like organized battles more, and the rave scene did at the time as well later with that event Liquid Combat, like I said, a couple
God?
others are going on. So they're you know they both had it, but it's just again different environments. One was like honestly pure party, and one was more like a jam. Yeah, like a party, but there was also more of like this emphasis on like a b-boy battle and a competition and a prize and you know what I mean,
Right, right,
a little bit more than the other side.
right. Okay, got it, got it. And all this so far, you're still living in Chicago from
Yeah,
everything. Okay. What happens or what was the what happens?
my senior year of high school, my parents moved to the first city, the borderline of Illinois and Wisconsin, Kenosha. And
Uh-huh.
and I ended up spending a year in high school in Kenosha, and then I went to college in Milwaukee.
Hmm.
So I had moved an hour and a half north to Milwaukee and spent time there. But for us, like you would go between the two. You would go, but anyone who is in the area would go between Chicago and Milwaukee because there's only like an hour and a half drive to go between the two cities.
Okay. Okay. And then where did you transit? How'd you get to the West Coast? How'd you end up in
Yeah.
how'd you
Yeah. So I started. I moved to LA in 2007. So that's
Oh,
why most of my time has been here in LA. My upbringing is Chicago area.
okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's why everyone's like, "Oh, Function's West Coast," because the reality is the majority of my time has been in LA.
Got
You
it.
know, I've been here almost 20 years now.
Okay.
But I was already, but the introduction to street dance was from Midwest. It wasn't from LA. I was already doing this stuff before I came to LA. I started coming to LA in 2003 to learn from the Electric Boogaloo's.
Okay. You came to LA in 2003 to learn from the Electric Boogaloo's.
Boogaloo's, B-Boy Summit, that time where the events were real hype here. And then
Wow.
also seeing a lot of the OG waivers though, you know what I mean? Like getting exposed to that as well, seeing those guys in person had a big influence on me as well because West Coast, like I didn't my influences in the beginning were East Coast because it was a little bit closer. Seeing those guys and you know what they had to offer and like that style of waving, which is more like tight control or what you would people call microwaves, like that stuff that came you know from East Coast.
Mhm.
And also I want to throw in like Florida as well because you have Aqua Boogie down there who was a few years older than me, but highly underrated, influential waver at the time.
In Florida.
Florida, and then Florida had B-Boy Pro-Am, which was a huge event in the early late 90s, early 2000s. Everyone was going to B-Boy Pro-Am at the time. You got people from France coming all over.
Wow.
I was driving down there to go to those events, like 28-hour drive to go to the event.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay. Wow. I mean, I like to know how did you end up meeting Aqua Boogie? I'm
B-Boy
curious.
Pro-Am.
Okay, that's how you
B-Boy
met.
Pro-Am was I saw Aqua Boogie. I saw Mystery.
Okay.
So like everyone again, like this Pro-Am had a name at the time. Sally Sly,
Wow.
Stiga.
Okay.
That was like early 2000s. I think that was the first time I saw the French guys. That was also really the first time I saw someone boogalooing. I saw Sally Sly boogalooing. I was like, oh shit, this guy from France knows it. Um, and yeah, so I saw like that also like the southeast coast influence and what they were doing.
Okay, wow. And then the West Coast, what were some of the highlights or that you felt were really influential to your style or just to your experience, your journey?
Hugo, Taco,
Go Taco. I gotta tell us
Pomona guys. Like it was like
what
Hugo, Taco, and Pomona. Like you know, they're all of those guys were you know they were showing out. And you saw Dollar Bill from oh man, there's so many, bro. Like you saw like the OG waivers at that time and
yeah,
what they were doing, and that's how like it also made me kind of like think about everything together because they were doing crazy. Wavo was doing crazy hand waves,
Wavo. Wow, there's
you
a
know.
lot of people, a lot of people. So okay, give us a story like when you like were you invited to the session? Were you just you showed up? How did you get introduced to the community or was there someone that brought you into it, or did you just?
Oh, for what in
Or
Chicago?
let's say no, it's in the West Coast.
Well, I was in ABM,
How
so
did you get part of ABM?
to
And
ABM.
yeah.
ABM started from uh, there is this event called Scribble Jam in Cincinnati,
Hmm.
and this is like the biggest hip hop jam in the Midwest at the time. This is where Eminem got his name, basically.
Okay.
This is where the people who were in the on the hip hop side were going, and then obviously like the funk movement was connected there, so people were all kind of meeting up. So people who were more just popping um,
Hmm.
would meet up at Scribble Jam. I met Pringles, and then
Okay.
I met J Rock. I'm at Popula, and we all had names at the time of like being poppers known in the area. We
Hmm.
formed ABM, which eventually became you know a crew that was going around the U.S. and around the world at the time in the early 2000s.
Wow.
Um, so ABM was going out to LA to represent at these events like Summit and Freestyle Session. And again, we were trying to learn from all the OGs.
Hmm.
EBs, Bop and Andre. We were trying to, you know, we were trying to watch all of them. And for me, I was more watching the waivers. I was definitely learning from whatever I could from the Boogaloos and Skeet and Pete and Sugar Pop, who I learned from the most. But I was also really um, focused on watching like Hugo and Taco and Boardman.
Hmm.
Slick Dog was also around at the time, you know, and
Wow.
seeing their Dollar Bill, all of the OGs, but then also again seeing people from other countries come in, and yeah, it was just man, early 2000s. LA had some of the most like eye-opening events for street dance, I would say, in the history of, or in my history so far.
Wow, wow. Interesting. Would you say, hmm. All right, so let's see if I'm on the same page. Would you say that there was such creativity, like unique ways of approaches with waving and popping compared to now? Or would you say it's the same, different?
Um, it's just it's different. Not saying that it's one is better than the other. I would just say that my generation was more exposed to the sources.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, because I mean they're still around, and everyone should be really trying to tap into those sources and ask them these questions, because I think there's a lot of controversial topics sometimes about what is what.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was a thing of, we were seeing them basically. I'm 44, so like they were kind of like my age back then.
Hmm.
Still, like, still getting down active, and the OGs are now too, to an extent, but not
Right.
as much as before,
Right.
because some of them have died and some of them have, you know what I mean? Like, life happens, and so you just got to see a little bit more of it then, and
Hmm.
have them show you in person, and that's probably why for me it's it's their influence still sits within me, of like how I see things, why I call things the way they are, and the reason behind it.
I see. I see. What was I know there's so many, like you mentioned, so many influential people in the West Coast that you met. Could you share maybe, hmm, is there any memory that specifically maybe is a highlight for you that's a waiver, someone that's a waiver that you met that you were like, that was crazy. I know
it's
that.
it's it's like it's each one of them, because there's, I feel like, there's it's I'd say, like, through time, like the ones who really had like a wow influence on me. um like, I'll go in order. I'll go in order.
Yeah, yeah.
um the first one was Bam Bam from New York.
Interest. Okay.
He was super clean, like super illusional clean, looked fake in person.
Hmm.
The second one was Domino. So
Is it from
Domin
East Coast too?
also in Floor Lords
Okay.
crew, so from Boston.
Boston. Okay.
Um, so I saw those two. Like, I saw only a little bit of Shallow at the time.
Hmm.
Um, but I know he had really isolated waves.
Hmm.
Um, and then I would say, like, seeing Aqua Boogie,
Hmm.
again, very isolated, very clean waves. So, like, I'd say, like, from the East Coast side, it was those four that I would see first, and then, when I met Aqua Boogie, I was already coming out here too. So, like, again, you're starting to see like similar time ranges.
Hmm.
And then in LA, Taco,
Hmm.
Hugo,
Hmm.
um, Daryl Stokes,
Hmm.
Wavo. Man, I mean, I feel like there were a lot more.
Hmm.
Um, there were just so many at that time, but they were older. Junior Boogaloo. I mean, at one point later, they all had massive influences. Dollar Bill. I
Hmm.
mean, I literally wrote. I was watching all of them.
Wow.
They've all had some influence to me in some way, shape, or form. Yeah,
Wow.
and
Right.
I'm sure I'm missing like
Right.
a million others, because like there's also, like, just through time you see people that like were around that probably, you don't hear their names as much, like someone like Puppet Master, or that guy was sick. Bop and Ron, like those guys were
Hmm.
crazy nasty,
Wow.
and also could do really good waving, even though Bop and Ron's obviously like more associated with bopping.
Right. Wow.
Yeah,
I J Boog ex creative, he wrote Function, the absolute legend
man,
with the
it's
three
my
waving emojis.
my Hawaiian Tyler. I remember the first time I met Tyler was in Hawaii. and
Oh,
he was like one of the, I think he was like the only popper on the island. I don't know. You tell me, folks, was it you might have been number one or the first one I met. I know Fu moved there. Like Fu Manchu from Liquid Pop Collective ended up moving out there, and obviously like built this scene, but or built a scene out there. But yeah, he was. I think Tyler was number one. What's up, bro? I'm good to see you. I know he's grinding, making these crazy ass videos.
he said his brain was not ready to meet function. LOL.
Yeah, yeah. I was making my rounds, and that was my thing. I never was. I've never like tried to overly promote my shit or anything like that, and I just wanted to go in person and show in person, and that's and represent myself.
Wow. Which this kind of a question I have is, what do you think were there key moments or what factors played a role into people knowing you as Function, the dude that really
Bro,
what do you feel there were things that happened that
I,
led to
I
that?
was always, I guess, waving and doing waving like movements, and um, I again in the very beginning I was battle heavy, so I was like I was out to put a name for myself in the beginning, and I didn't care about like the competitions. I was a cipher head, still am, and so I think people just through time had seen and acknowledged like my influence in waving, and like whenever there was a waving cipher, I was there,
Mm.
and that even went to like not here, but also going overseas. Because another thing that was um, very, I'd say, influential for this beginning of the U.S. and Europe connection outside the U.S. was Just Debut 2005 or six,
Hmm.
when the the people who were good at waving out here at the time, or some of them, that was myself and Jay Smooth, Bionic, and Junior Boogaloo, had a cipher exchange with Salah, Bishop, and a couple other guys, and it was like U.S. waivers and French waivers exchanging. I don't know if it was the first time, but it was very historical. Another historical exchange that I clearly remember, and yeah, that was crazy.
What is there any footage of this
No,
event?
yeah,
There's
this is
no.
like maybe Coney Rock would have it, because like at the time ABM, Coney Rock was documenting ABM, and so we put out DVDs right in the early 2000s, and Coney was with us documenting the trip. He came out with us to France to document. He might have some, but this was like
Hmm.
another historical like my generation exchange. And
Nice.
junior's not junior's older generation, but Jason Bionic and I were the same generation. Salah's a little bit older. Bishop's my age. This was like I clearly remember like a historical exchange of waving, and
Wow.
I at that time I also heard of Bishop from Salah. I met Salah like a year or two before in Kansas City, and I asked Salah at the time who is like the waver in France, and he
And he said
said
Bishop.
Bishop Pure Wave, and he could, his English was kind of broken, and he said Bishop Pure Wave, and also Salah had really never seen Liquid at the time, so I was showing him Liquid, and he was filming me, and he said, show me Liquid," because he was like
Right.
his
The
his
English
so
at
I
the
was showing him more Liquid at the time, because like he already
oh,
had crazy isolations and everything, but they weren't so detailed with their hands as much as we were over in the US.
wow. Okay. Nice. A question from Distortion. It says, "Did you get any inspiration from Frequency, or were going for a different look with your waves? His style was very rigid slash statue-like, but insanely clean. Wish he still danced. He's a family man now."
Frequency, what I would say, the people at the time who were able to do Liquid and waving well, Frequency was one of them. So we had some kind of similar style, I would say, in terms of like trying to be very isolated, but I feel like his power and my power of like what our bodies had more like strength in were different. Mine was more in my stomach and my chest and my hips and that area, and Frequency's arm. he had a really good elbow. Like he could isolate his elbows very well for whatever reason. He had this like freakish elbow isolation. So I think we've had so many exchanges. We actually battled at Demph. I remember this clearly. Um, he I think he had some similar things to myself, but I think he also probably didn't focus on like also like the boogaloo, learning boogaloo and other styles from
Mm.
popping as much. I think he kind of stuck more on in maybe in waving. But yeah, I wish he danced more, again. Like I saw him the last time I saw him was like 2013. Um, so like 12 years ago. I know he's family man. So am I though, bro. I got a 5-year-old. I'm a dad. I got a full-time gig. I'm still doing it. So there's no excuses, bro. If you think he should he should still be dancing. If you love him, there's no excuses, man. I train at nighttime. I train on the weekends. You know what I mean?
He said if
I'm
you
sure.
want it,
I'm sure.
you can make
I'm
it.
sure he probably still does it. You know, he just just does it on the side, or does it does it on his free time. It's a balance at one point. But yeah. I mean, much respect to all of frequency, all the liquid pop guys that we go way back. Tiny Love too, man. First met Tiny Love at B-Boy Pro Am in 2000, also in Miami. Didn't even meet him in New York.
Wow, damn, everyone wants
Tiny,
that.
Tiny and Hypno. Hypno is his partner. Dementia also. They had a crew called Vibe Elements, also kind of like rave popping crew, and they were there, and I clearly remember them as well.
Nice, nice. Distortion wrote, but you guys didn't actually have beef though, right? Wasn't it
No,
mostly the
no,
ability?
we both had names at the time. Like, again, like we never. I battled Frequency. I battled Code Red. I battled like everyone, man. Like D Strange never told a story about like we one time I was in New York with D Strange and I clearly remember this like the D Strange and who was it, Sammy, um where we battled at a bar and we got I was wasted. We got battled at a bar. So like, no, it's just like during that time, everyone was kind of battling. Like,
Mm,
it's like no, it's still a thing. But I think nowadays, as I've gotten older, I don't care about battling so much. I care more about kind of just vibing and ciphering and so on and
mm,
so forth. So no, there was no real beef. I think people associate sometimes in the liquid community beef with me though specifically because I didn't learn from the Liquid Pop Collective and I have a different experience with liquid than people who learn from the LPC. And
mm.
it's that's there's sort of a clear difference of where what I learned and what I call liquid, and what came from the LPC video. Even though again, there's some similar things we were doing. It's not like it was 100% different, but the approaches were different in the cities.
Mm. You touched on a little bit about the battles and the past. Is there a battle would you say was your favorite you've had? Is there a battle that I don't know, a highlight? It could be something you've seen, maybe not even of yourself battling, or it could be a battle you were in.
No, honestly, no. There's nothing that like just those exchanges that I remember. Like, I never really thought battling was in the sense of what it is today was all that great because I feel like it feels like a sport, you know. In terms of like exchanges in the ciphers, fucking tons, man. Like I can't. There's not one like. Yeah, at one point it was just like anyone and everyone, just to exchange. So I would just say like during the times in the time of like B-Boy Summit or being a Just Debut in the early 2000s or, those things like the cipher battles that were going on, those were the ones that I think were probably like the most like shit.
Energy
Like that was, well, it was like
level.
there was just no rounds. It was more like it wasn't orchestrated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think there's that side of it that's the rawness that I liked and I remember. Yeah,
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. J Bugs Creative asked, do you think that psychedelics have played any role in how waving has evolved in the last 5 or 10 years?
I
Huh,
think
that's
through time, like I think that that's with a lot of stuff, not
mm,
just waving. I think artists in general,
that's
I think
interesting.
that's just been a thing, and people might want to acknowledge it or not. That's on you, but like there's if you were around, there's a reality to that, and I think that's enough to be said, right? So,
Yeah.
did psychedelics influence Jimi Hendrix? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
not even in the like through time, like like that's I think that's just something that's part of American culture. Maybe
Mm,
world culture too, but I know in America, obviously, you hear about that and people talking about it now. It's in the media and in the news, so on
right.
and so forth. And everyone's discovering things that at one point were kind of condoned in the '60s. You know,
Mm,
Timothy Leary getting a bad name, and
right. Yeah. Yep.
so I think I think that answers that one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting question. I know it's not really touched upon. At least to my knowledge, or at least the questions I've asked people of, yeah, how does psychedelics, how has that played a role in dance culture or street dance culture, or I don't know. Anyway, that's another story. Who knows?
It's another story.
Another series to go into. Um, but I guess my last question, Function, I would like to ask you is, what message would you like to tell the world now, the current generation, people that are watching? Is there something you would like to let them know?
Yes, yeah. I'm just going to speak on the waving thing because that's what discussion was tied around. Um, and I'll just say that right now, I would say that we see um, a lot of different influences throughout, and you know, we have to remember where it comes from. It's really important. It's really, really important to just make sure you're doing your homework, you're seeing and you're listening, and you're out there actively asking questions to the ones who came before you. And even for me, it's the same thing. I'm still trying to ask questions. Um, that's not forever. And, at one point, you're going to take it for granted if you don't ask those questions about what's the history, what the origin is, why do you do this, where does it come from the OGs. And I'm not going to speak for them because I'm not an OG, but I know that I have a massive influence from them, seeing them from my teenage years until now into my 40s. Um, so you got to do your homework, and we have to be careful about how we um, how we approach the style too. That for waving specifically, that it's not like branching off too far where it's no longer what waving is from this popping umbrella. You know what I mean? Like that it's not just like one camp. It's you gotta again like think about like the influence from mysterious poppers with cobra and snaking, or the even the Pomona style, or with Taco or Hugo, like what they've done. Again, out in the East Coast, what they've done, like these are all people who have really kind of put the fingerprint of what waving is. I'm also throwing Wavo in there. Um, can't ignore that. You have to make sure that you're honoring the culture and the dance, so we don't break away. And if it is like a breakaway thing, like that's something that could also happen as well. But like at some point, we have to say like you know this is or it isn't, because not everything can be waving. You know what I mean? Like
Oh no, this sounds like the whole animation topic.
yeah, well, it's the same
So,
thing. There comes a point where it's like it's no longer that style. And I think it's one of these things where you just kind of know it when you see it. You know what I mean? Like because like you could get so subjective, if you will, into like what is and isn't. But it's also like there's a feeling, there's a history, there's a lot, there's like hidden messaging in it that if you start to ignore that, to me it's like it's no longer that. It's something else.
ooh.
And that's a I know that's a hot topic right now.
I
And
wasn't aware of that. Interesting.
yeah, I think it's the same thing going on. I think like it'll continue to be that way. And like yeah, at one point, like not everything can be waving, right? You have to kind of think about the history, who it comes from, and then maybe ask yourself, am I waving now, or am I just kind of feeling like I'm waving?
This is interesting. Am I waving or do I feel like I'm waving? And this can apply to every style.
Everything, man. It's not
Am I
just waving. It's just yeah.
this dance that came before me and the names that came before me, am
Am
I
I doing those?
am
Am I
I
actually doing that?
or am
Or am
I
I?
going on to something else that maybe I'm creating something else which could be
Yeah,
beautiful, but it's something else.
yeah. And it doesn't mean you cannot be an innovator. It doesn't mean you can't innovate within the style. But it's at some point it's like it's no longer that, and I think that's a continued discussion for the world. And I'll just say that it's everyone should be teaching everyone and continue to learn, and hopefully like this is part of. I'll just say like to end it like this is part of what we're trying to do at Ways Within.
Mm,
Like we want to make sure that we're preserving the culture and the history, and but at the same time, like I said before, we want to make sure that we're progressing, and we're not constricting people to be like you have to do this and this. It's not right. Everyone's got to find their own style. Everyone's got to find themselves in the dance, and that's just through time. There's no shortcut to this. So yeah, that's hopefully where we're
mm.
going. And I'll just say like for anyone who's out in Europe, hopefully you come to Ways Within in Berlin. It's going to be dope. I can't wait to get out there and exchange and see some people because I don't come very often, and
Mm.
my time is super limited, like I was saying before, and so it'll be cool to see what everyone's doing out there and exchange and share the love and build.
Nice,
That's what's up.
nice. Man, I got a bonus question. I'm sorry. I thought
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
gonna be the last
yeah.
one, but I know where's the but last question is from Jay, and I want to hear what he has to what he this question. Jay Bug X Creative said, last question from me. In the style's current state, what do you think waving is excelling at, and what would you like to see more of?
Style and the style's currency. What is it? What is waving is excelling at exterior. So
Exterior.
there's like also this I know I heard Distortion say like exterior versus interior, and that's maybe a topic for difference between liquid and waving, but waving is both interior and exterior. I see a lot of kids, I don't want to say kids, however old you are,
Current
newer
generation,
dancers, current
maybe.
generation is doing crazy exterior patterns and a lot of like, a lot of big movements, which is cool. It's I love it. It's different. What's missing is control and isolation a little bit. Like you start to see maybe a little bit less emphasis on being more isolated. And I think that's also part of this discussion of um, what is and isn't waving. You know what I mean? Because again, if you need to have some roots in the foundations of it in order for it to be waving. But a lot of people are doing crazy like arm waves, external arm waves, and stuff like that for sure. But maybe it's not so much like the internal kind of controlled
Hmm.
waving that more rooted in like foundational things.
Like a muscle control kind of sense,
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
detailed
Detailed
isolation.
isolation. Yes.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Well, huh. I wasn't aware of where the of what was going on with waving seeming to expand into other territories and so that's interesting to hear.
So
Distortion. What did he just last thing from me when I was mentioning about the liquid about not being received well by the street dance community? I actually started out going to a lot of jams where b-boys. Oh, okay. I think okay. Yeah. Interesting.
I will say this though. Oh wait, he said something.
Oh, whoa. Paragraphs. So let's
We're
see.
out. Whoa, damn, bro, hold on.
He said,
um,
hold on.
we're out in big numbers, and like you mentioned earlier, there was a lot of crossover between b-boys and poppers events back then. You asked me about who specifically was not respecting Liquid and Truth. The vocalist people were. Oh yeah, 100%. Um, but there were and still are people in the popping waving community that don't see it as a style. But the way I explained it before made it seem like it's the whole popping. No, no, but yeah, but that's the thing you got to remember. Distortion is like those same b-boys who were like hating on liquid and waving we're also hating on popping. Like it was the same thing. It's like, oh, there was always this mentality, I think, back in the day is like popping's easy or waving's easy or liquid's easy and b-boying's hard. And I think that like that was just something some some b-boys thought because of like the physical the physical exertion and the physical strength and athleticism that's needed for b-boying. It's basically gymnastics in many ways what they were doing. And I would also say the ones who were doing that weren't good b-boys. Like they were more like power move guys who like had no rhythm and you know what I mean? Like kind of clowning on what we were doing, but didn't even understand what we were doing because they had no musicality, they had no sense of rhythm in some cases. So yeah, I would say like I hear you. I think everyone has got that at some point in their life. I never personally, even as a liquid dancer though, I never had people. I had people from all styles come up and give me props in the very beginning, even before I was getting into popping. But
Mm.
again, yeah, even in today's world, you'll have people, who just don't understand what you're doing, and that's the bulk of it. Is like they just don't understand it, and that's nothing. That's nothing at you. That's their ignorance.
Mm. Right, right. Yeah, people. It's always gonna be people saying something
Yeah,
savage.
people are dumb.
Oh
Um,
man. Well, but Function, I want to thank you again for taking time to share your story. And so I mean me getting to know who you are as well. I feel I appreciate you sharing that. It's inspiring to hear also the differences between the jams and the club scenes then versus how currently now it's fascinating to see to just see history, just to kind of look back and be like, oh wow, how things have evolved and changed. Um, but
gotta bring it back to a little bit. I'll say maybe I'll end with that. Like it's you know everyone stay off their phones. You know what I mean? When you go out in the world, don't be so
yeah,
much on your phone. But
for sure.
that was something great about that time.
The authenticity and the fact that you would drive so far to be
Oh
to the
man,
jams, to the sacrifice and the more effort it seemed you had to kind of put to get to those events, meet these people. Yeah, we have the technology has made it much more accessible in a sense, but it's not as real. So it's interesting to see how
oh
that's
100 man,
you know.
100. And that has very much shaped me as a person as well.
Mhm.
And how this dance has influenced me. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was wild times for sure.
For sure. But anyway, everyone that's tuned in, appreciate the comments and the all that, and the yeah, I'll be continuing this series. I'm gonna be interviewing some other waivers, and yeah, I'll just keep collecting the stories. So
Yeah, much
yeah,
respect, y'all.
yeah.
Peace.
Take care. Take care.
Bye.